the reason, the motivation for starting an airline determines everything. The CEO consultant that Museveni is hiring from Ethiopia, he's been working on a different arrangement, completely different from Uganda, where every decision is taken by either Museveni or his son or their handlers like Andrew Mwenda. Because Mwenda spoke about the appointment of this Ethiopian even before it was announced. Ethiopia as a country is both militaristic and socialist. People don't work for salary in Ethiopia, they work for the country. That's why Ethiopian Airlines has remained the only profit-making airline in Africa. Look, the service they offer is a very basic service. The food they give you, you can't compare to what Uganda Airline is giving. So Museveni and all of us must understand why we are reviving and starting this airline. In the Middle East, in the Gulf, the airline is part of their luxury. They want to bring more traffic in their country. And the target, therefore, if you're going to run Emirates or Qatar, will be how many passengers do you bring in our country, either as traders or as tourists. And that's why the services they offer, very luxurious. I have traveled using American Airlines, Europeans. With the Americans, they give you a blanket if you are on a long journey. If you pull it towards your leg, the head remains in the open. But if you are in a Qatar Airways, they will make for you a bed as if you are at home, because theirs is luxury to bring people into their country. They don't care about the profit. So that's a decision we must take fast. The trouble with the Bamutraki is that we are making too many losses. But did we know how much loss we are going to make before starting the airline and before appointing Bamutraki? Did we know? Did anyone ever tell Uganda that this will be a loss-making company? And then we begin judging that in our estimation this was supposed to be a 2 billion loss-making company every year. All those assessments needed to have been done. They were never done. Museveni just woke up like Idi Amin because he wanted to fly somewhere. That airline of his, the jet, was not in good condition. So he started by asking Ethiopia to lend him one aircraft. They said they are all committed. He asked Ruto, Kenya sent him one. He got angry and he said, now I am starting airline tomorrow. Same style like Idi Amin. No visibility study. Go back to what Mwakanizi said as a Secretary to the Treasury. They all opposed to the restarting of Uganda Airlines because it will require money every year to run it for many, many years. That airline will never make profit even if they bring an angel to run it. Even you must understand that Museveni is a problem himself. There are many things he has failed in Uganda. Why doesn't he bring an Ethiopian to be a president? First of all, even Uganda as a country, that you don't see any manager, someone with competence. They run Stanbic, one of the most profitable banks in Uganda. At one time, you had someone running Airtel, MTN, and big companies. Why does Museveni think that he must bring an Ethiopian? And you need to understand Ethiopia. I've been in Ethiopia many times. They have grown. That airline remained the only functional company, even when Ethiopia as a country collapsed. Why? It's a source of pride. The people working in it don't take money out of it. So Museveni acts arbitrarily. So when were the adverts done? Does anyone know the target of this new Ethiopian? What is his target upon which you are going to judge him? Is it traffic? Is it money? Is it buying of aircraft? So what is the target for which Ugandans should on day one begin evaluating this Ethiopian? Or it's just business as usual. You just bring in one person, he fails you now go to Cairo and bring an Egyptian, he fails, you go to London and bring a Muzungu. I want to start with the target. What were the targets when Museveni was hand-picking? Because I have told you all the airlines in Africa loss-making. Did we know how much loss we will make by reviving the Uganda airline? So if you are judging Bamutraki emotionally, you're going to make the same mistakes. Because there are people who think when you bring an Ethiopian, Uganda airline will be making profits. That Kenya airline, Ruto was in America, the president of Kenya, looking for a buyer. Nobody wants to buy it. So airline is not a profitable business. You only benefit from an airline by tourism and trade. So even before we evaluate Bamutraki and the money and the corruption, is Uganda Airline the only corrupt company in Uganda that oh, this is something that is unheard of in Uganda. All the companies under Museveni, whether it is ministers or MPs, they are all looking for money. So maybe now that's why he wants to hire people from outside, and I hope he can begin by hiring a president. In a business, salaries are supposed to be determined by the output. If I bring a CEO from wherever and then give him targets, because many CEOs earn by bonuses. If I'm going to give you a target of reducing losses, if you have been making losses of 200 billion and you reduce them by 100, why shouldn't I give you $1 billion shilling from the beginning? For me, it is the target that you determine the salary and the output. Even if you take no salary, but the company continues being mismanaged, there is no value in it. So the value is measured against targets. Okusoka Museveni ne Uganda bakomyawo Uganda Airline nga tebamaze kola kunoonyereza kumala dubi lwaki yali yagwa. Kati buli kyebakola bakikolera mu ngeri ya kupapirira. Ennyonyi mu nsi yonna oteekwa okusalawo lwaki ogitandise. Mu Africa ekitongole ky'ennyonyi kyokka kyokka ekikola amagoba kya Ethiopia. Lwaki kikola amagoba? Ethiopia bagitambuzanga amagye nga Russia tetuuka ku North Korea naye eri awo wakati. Omuntu mu Ethiopia asobola n'okukolera obwereere nga bakolera ggwanga. Nze nali Ethiopia nga member wa Parliament bamuwa $200. Mu Uganda buli member wa Parliament nga nange kwendi tufuna sente zisuka $1,000. Naye ate nze okusanga member wa Parliament aba Ethiopia batusinga okukola. Kati okuleta Ethiopia lwaki ekola amagoba? Tandikira ku bakozi abalimu. Abakozi b'ennyonyi abakola mu Ethiopia bakolera ggwanga tebakolera musaala. Kyekiri mu kukola mu Ethiopia wonna. Ennyonyi buli wogitandika nga tutegedde lwaki ogitandika emenya. Egypt balina ennyonyi emu ku zisinga obunene n'obukadde wano. South Africa baziina. Eye Kenya yabalemerera. Government nejja ku Kenya Airways nayo negiremerera. Ruto mwamulaba nga ali mu America anoonya agigula era n'agigula n'abula. Kubanga ennyonyi tutunuulire mu bintu bibiri. Abawalabu batandika ennyonyi Emirates kata n'endala nga tibazinoonyamu magoba, bazinoonya kuleeta abantu. Dubai ng'ekibuga buli mwaka kifuna abalambula abasuka $5,600,000. B'ennyonyi bagitunuuliranga egenda okuleeta bizinensi. Mu Uganda bagitunuuliranga egenda okuleeta abalambuzi n'abajja okusuubula amagoba ne bagafunira walala. Mu America ne mu Bulaaya ennyonyi bagirabanga ntambula. Ne bw'olinnye ennyonyi y'Ebulaaya yo mu America bajula na butakuwa mmere. Bw'olaba akalangiti ke bakuwa okwebaka nga obudde bukuzibiddemu, bw'okatuusa ku bigere ku mutwe tekabeerako. Bw'olinnya kata obudde ne buziba bakwalira ekitaano beera nga ali waka. Kubanga benjawulo weeri nti bano baasalawo ennyonyi luxury bali ntambula. Kakati ekyo Museveni ne bannayuganda kyebasooka okutegeera bamanye nti ennyonyi tugitandise ku lwaki. Bw'oba oyagala abantu kujja mu Uganda, Uganda buli mwaka efuna abantu abayitira entebe gavumenti beeyita abalambuzi wakati wa $1,900,000 n'okutuuka ku $2,000,000. Bw'oba target buli gw'ogenda okulonda nga manager w'ennyonyi oteekwa okumuwa target. Twagala oyongere ku bantu abajja mu Uganda bafuke $3,000,000. Kubanga ennyonyi y'Emirates eyinza okuba nga omwaka etambuza abantu basukka $2,200,000 naye abayingira mu Dubai bali 5 Ekyokubiri tetwagala kugisasanyizako ssente nnyingi. Ekyo oteekwa okisalawo. Ethiopia nali njirinyemu ne Uganda Airlines. Mu Ethiopia bajula kukuwa biberenge basobole okufiisa ssente. Mu Uganda Airline bakuwa mmere. Kati ebyo omuntu agenda okuyingira mu nnyonyi ndaba waliwo okubugumirira kungi nti muleete aba Ethiopia kuba bakola amagoba. Oyo bagenda kumugoba nga bakayita emyaka egi. Bwe banaabeera nga tebamaze kulambula bulungi lwaki Uganda Airline weeri.
Museveni is not an expert in interviewing airline workers, managers, among others. It is very concerning that Parliament and COSASE has investigated Uganda Airline and made various sensitive recommendations, including advising that recruitment within Uganda Airline at the various levels must be done in accordance with the law. Let's have expatriates, let's have advertisements so that people apply, not random picking, because we are repeating the same mistake. Recently, as we are interviewing Bamturachi, she made an assertion that for her, appointment was a gift as a CEO. So we don't want to repeat the same story that even this new one, this old man, is going to also arrange that it's a gift from Mr. Museveni. No, let's have a public advertisement and public application. So that, and even the interview must be done by experts in aviation and airline business. Otherwise, we risk repeating the same mistakes. I doubt that there will be any improvement. But again, this random picking and nomination, where appointment is by directives and direction from Mr. Museveni, is very concerning. And if this man visited Mr. Museveni, what questions did he ask this man? How could he verify that he's an expert in that area? He needed to hire experts. Maybe he would have formed the part of the interview panel to advertise and interview workers and potential replacement for Mamuturachi. But this kind of random picking might take us in the same circle of making losses within the aviation sector for Uganda Airline. It is very concerning.
What does the mismanagement mean to the taxpayer?
Oh, of course, a lot of money is spent on Uganda Airline. As last time we interrogated, Uganda Airline had different spare parts for each part of the aircraft. You could find the bodies for Bombardier, the doors for Boeing, among others. We cannot have a very disgruntled packaging of our aircrafts, and you expect to perform. As well, in terms of awarding tenders, contracts, and recruitment, there must be adherence to the law. Once all these are not adhered to, and we have incompetent people in office, you want to have effective service delivery and management. We shall be repeating the same story. And in event, a lot of money is being spent on Uganda Airline. For the last years, it has been making losses, and Ugandans are spending. This is taxpayers' money spent on an airline that doesn't make profits and that doesn't progress. If we repeat the same story, we shall continue making losses, huge losses in the billions of money, or at the expense of a taxpayer. And Ugandan taxpayers also need accountability and the value for money. No, this man is just alleged to be experienced, but we are not sure. We must have expatriates to assess. Merely serving and serving Neera and Airline doesn't mean that you experienced. It is a question of paperwork and documentation. And to assess experience, it requires expatriates, not just someone who served. Because those airlines are highly developed. People perform very little in a big establishment. You cannot say that he knows it all. Probably he was in marketing, or he was in another segment, and you say he's experienced. Experience is not a question of how old you are, or which company you served before. It involves much more. So I'm not convinced yet that he's experienced. It is a question of interview. He hasn't been interviewed, and I have confidence and trust and assurance that Mr. Museveni has no capacity to assess competence. Ateberezebwa okutta omugwira oba bosi we mu ggwanga lya Syria omutyago bayita Vicky ali nnyo ku butambi nga balaga nti bambi bagamba yatta mukama we ate naye ne bamulaga mu butambi nti ng'agamba nti ne mukama we yali amugambye nti nange nkuwadde obutwa kati ne agamba kale katufeffena. Ekyo kiraga frustration bwe kiba nga kituufu kyaliyo. Kiraga nti bano bannayuganda tebalina buddukiro. Nze ndudde wano ku Parliament nga nzijukiza gavumenti ministry eya gender, ministry ya foreign affairs ne gavumenti okutwalira wamu bateese ne gana amawanga tufune endagaano ku bakozi. Munnayuganda abenga baba agenza okukolera eweeru afuna obukuumi mateeka n'okumanya eddembe lye nti akola atya waba asanze okusoomoozebwa. Niba ne tutuuse mu kaseera nga bannayuganda tabana wakuddukira talina kyakukola. Kati ngono wenaabye kakatambike bandaze aka Vicky akagamba nti Vicky yabadde ayogera bwetaba AI nga yabadde ayogera ng'agamba ye tiyabadde na kyakola n'agamba kanfene mukama wange n'amala naganzirukirewa. Kiraga talina simu yakuba, talina wakuddukira. Tugera okulya aboogera mu ministry ya gender ne Labour n'aboogera mu foreign affairs nga bagamba nti abo bagenda byabwe bagenda awatali makampani. Obo bugayaavu mu kuwa comment ne statement ng'oli mu ministry ya gender ne Labour nga mwe mu license nga amakampani. Lwaki muli batemu basajjamu aba ministry ya gender ne Labour? Munnayuganda n'agenda nga alina okusoomoozebwa n'odda mu kubalaata nti bamanyi nga bwe bagenda. Bwe kuba kukusa kw'abantu gavumenti yevunaanyizibwa ku nsalosalo z'eggwanga boundaries. Munnayuganda akola atya? babakukusaba bayisa ku nsalosalo gavumenti yevunaanyizibwa abagenda ebweru w'eggwanga amakampani gavumenti minisitule ya genda ne leba beba layisinsinga kati munansi akola atya n'endagaano ze tubatikako pressure nkole endagaano ku bakozi temuzikoze newe muzikoze muzikwese kuba kati tebwebuuza na ku bano ba victim abakozi abakolera ebweru w'eggwanga essaawa eno twali tusuubira ati gavumenti erina obuvunaanyizibwa n'ensa bandibadde basindise n'abakonsula abaffe abali ku embasi zaffe eyo mu region bagende bakyalire munnayuganda ono Viki waali balabe embeera gyayisibwamu yaali mu mbeera ntuufu nze naliko emabega kaawo mu ggwanga mu sakaani emu mu Saudi nga wayo bannayuganda nga kinabo mukaga nga baagwa eddalu watya nga noono yabadde atabuseemu ani agenda omuwolereza ani agenda omulowoozaako mufunira looyo oba puliida kati bingi nnyo ebikolebwa kyakusatu ani asindikibwa mu kooti zino ng'awozesebwa ku embasi ya Uganda butuulya ansa ez'obugayaavu zezawidde mu minisitule ya genda ne leba ne minisitule ya foreign affairs okusigala nga ekyasirise ani agenda okwogerera munnayuganda kubanga muntegeera mu nzirukanya y'amawanga n'amawanga munansi w'ensi asobola n'osingisibwa omusango ne bateesa ekibonerezo akisaavingire mu nsi ye basobola n'okumusabira pardon oba ekisonyiwo nga gumusinze ne bano abatandise okwogera n'obugayaavu nti beetwala bokka be bamanyi gye baayita babanga abasaddaase bannayuganda bannaye mwe abali mu minisitule ya genda ne leba abali mu foreign affairs mwe abaddukanya gavumenti ya Uganda mufune ku kisa n'obuntu bulamu munnayuganda ng'ono katono Viki ye ensonga yeyavuddeyo mulimu like nerabibwa newulirwa ne muli bamale kumutugumbula muloke muveeyo abaffe bannayuganda bangi abasingisibwa emisango nga balindiridde kuttibwa mawanga g'ebweru tewali abafuddeko waliwo n'abali mu misango abakyavulanyibwa abakyasibiddwa nga teri abafaako kibeere ekifaananyi ekigazi okuvayo n'enkola edduukirira bannayuganda bonna abawanga lyebweru w'eggwanga nga bafunye okusomoozebwa kubekwa amateeka ng'amawanga amalala bwe gakola mu kooti wabaawo konsula agendayo n'abakyalira mu kkomera wabeera abakyalira babeewo n'ennamba ze bakuba gye basobola okufuna obuyambi naye wawulira sitole gye bandaze ku Viki nga tamanyi talina na nnamba ya kkuba tamanyi wakuddukira kebe ennamba ya wano bweri w'eggwanga kati munnayuganda ali ebweru w'eggwanga naabanga yeesanga mu kusomoozebwa amawanga mangi agalese proposal ku ndagaano ku bakozi nga kati ezinakolwako emyaka giweze 5 Turkey yaleetadde endagaano proposal ku bakozi gavumenti ya Uganda minisitule ya genda baafuka kyesirikidde tebagigobereranga endagaano ku bakozi ne UAE tenaba kuteekebwa mu nkola wadde egobererwa endagaano zibazza obujja ne Saudi Arabia tebeebuuza ku bakadaama abasinga baleri batolosi adduka ku mulimu tasobola fuluma ne basigala mu mbeera ya frustration nga tebalina kyakuzzaako ani agenda obabeererawo so tudimanga gavumenti ekole ekyesobola kyonna okulikinga okutukira okumanya ekigenda mu maaso kubano bannayuganda omuli ne Viki n'okulaba kye bandisaanye okukola oba oliawo okumudduukirira mu nkola ey'amateeka naye namwe bannayuganda bawanga lyebweru w'eggwanga wakati w'okusomoozebwa kwonna mbasaba n'obuwombeefu wakati w'ebibanyigiriza obutatwalira amateeka mu ngalo wakati w'embeera zonna ffe tugasigala nga tulwana okulaba nga eddembe lyammwe n'amaloboozi gammwe tugoogerako era tugamplify nga nkimanyi wenjogera olwaleero bannayuganda abasukka 2 bampereza messages nti bali staka mu Cambodia tewali ayamba bannayuganda abali staka mu Syria enewali Viki bampereza abasukka mwata ne banga bekukumye mwembase ya Nigeria mu Damascus no za Syria bije bekwese kuba tetulinayo embassy tebalina ayamba amawanga mangi bannayuganda gye bali nga bali mu kubundabunda ne kubonabona minisitule ya genda mu buvunaanyizibwa ku bakozi mu license nga amakampani tetwaga mufuke kyesirikidde n'okuwa answers ekigayaavu nti bakukusibwa nga mu license nga amakampani nga mu license nga amakampani agabatwala ate buli agenda ebweru mumujjako ssente kyakubiri minisitule ya foreign affairs mu mudukanya embassy zaffe walina okubawo bano bakonsula bakola ki era lwaki tebakyalira bano abannayuganda abasomoozebwa kati abeekwese mu embassy ya Uganda mu Syria nabo mulinda bamale kwekyawa njakukubiriza bannayuganda gye muli wakati w'embeera zizo zonna musigale buli omu ng'adduukirira munne nga mubudaabuda mu bannayuganda buno obutambi bwe mutera okulaba ku TikTok ku Facebook nga abawala bakaaba byaddala
abalungi abatuuliriza era abatulaba olunaku olwaleero tukyaddeko ewa Sheikh Ashraf Dembe
sebo nsanyusa okubalaba amannya agange Seeka Ashraf Dembe akola ku bizibu by'enjawulo omuntu singa aba alina ebirwadde musomereddwa tumuwa amazzi ga lukuya nga bw'obadde ogalaba tugenda abantu ku kyoto ne twokya emizimu emibi egibabaamu n'okulomba edduwa abantu singa abeera ng'ali wano atuuse sobola okumulombera edduwa ne waba atatuuse nga mpadde amannya ge naye ng'ali wala maneetaase nze enamba yange yeeno eri 07-01-716-37-11. Nammwe bannyinaffe abali ebweru oyagala okuba nti oyagala okulombera ku ddwa ng'olina ebizibu visa zibuze amaka gakolongotana sente zikola zimpita mu ngalo ojja kumpeereza ekifaananyi kyo n'amannya go ebyo byokka bijja kummala nja kukulombera edduwa ojja kutereera. Olunaku olusembayo mu mwezi mba n'edduwa ey'awamu ffenna n'abalwadde bange abakadde n'abapya. Salaamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I mean, I have not left the opposition. People live for different reasons. Ask him for his reasons. On the question of radicalism, when you radicalize and start eating yourselves up, I don't think it is sensible. So if you are sensible, don't eat yourselves up. That is where I will agree with him. But people have different strategies. There is a group that feel radicalism is the way to go. You give them a chance. If what stops people from talking, except if some are not willing to talk? I mean that you are noob, so you can't talk to DP, you can't talk to FDC, you can't talk to PFF for a common cause, for a common agenda, for common aspirations. Then you would have something fundamentally wrong with you. If you say you can't speak to NRM, that's a different layer. But even NRM, what stops you from talking to them, at least for those areas where you think these are areas of common interest? I have seen, you remember when Ethiopia had a civil war?
Yes, most recently.
Most recently? You remember when Ethiopia was fighting with Eritrea?
1989.
Nobody could bring down an ET plane. That was an area of common interest, common aspiration. This is the lifeline of our country. Don't touch it, even when you're angry. So even when I'm angry with Museveni, I know that there are certain things I will not touch. I want to target and go for him, deal with him and destroy him politically. Deal with him, destroy his ideology politically. But if you're going to fight Museveni on one hand, then you're going to fight all the others in the opposition. Something is fundamentally wrong with you. I think to that extent, I agree. But radicalism, diplomacy, that's a strategy. Mumuwenye mbadde mukola china emyaka gino gyonna. Nze nnumwa buli lwe tufiirwa abamu ku bannaffe, ku balwanyi bannaffe ne bagenda naddala nga tetutegedde ensonga. Mpa nnyo Jeno Mugisha muntu ekitiibwa. Kigambibwa nti bwe yali agenda okufuluma FDC yasooka kukubira Dr. Besigye namugamba njagala kukulaba. N'agenda amugamba nti teweekanga bino tobiwulirira ku radio. Ngenze. Ensonga zange ze zino naziri. Bwe nali nfuluma DP ne team gye nagenda nayo nasooka kukubira Honorable Norbert Mao. Ne tuwogera at length ne mugamba we have disagreed in principle. Nze nfulumye ekibiina. Ne mugamba saagala okirabire ku mawulire. N'okutuusa olwaleero njogera ne Honorable Norbert Mao on matters ezitugatta ng'eggwanga bwe mba musisinkanye nga Minister wa Justice nga somebody gwe mmanyi gwe nkoze naye gwe bankuba naye tiyagasi mu mmotoka yange naki ekyo tekimpagiza byawe wagira tekinjagaza byayagala naye tusigala twogera olunaku lumu lugenda okukya nga byayagala byenjagala ebimu ng'ebyo bitugatta. So ogenda kwa Mwami Nsibambi ze kunnumye kubanga twetoddeko. Museveni alabika nga yatusinga numbers, afuba buli lunaku okusika okutwala baatwala. Ffe abalina abatono tugamba tutya nti n'abo abatono bwe batugendako tuba tubawonye. Sikiraba nga kyamagezi. I do not want to join those who call us, let's say, good riddance when we have lost someone we've worked with for so many years at a very senior level. It's a very, very disheartening development. He has exercised his right to choose where to belong to. It is his right to associate with those that he wants to associate with, that want to associate with him. But for me, I mean, it has hurt me. He's not somebody, he's not a man of straw, where I would say, that one we lose nothing. Museveni seems to have numbers. He does not only celebrate, but he goes out to fish more from us who have few. We can't celebrate. But now, now that he has taken a decision to go, to leave, my response is that it is a sad development. How I wish he had stayed.
Does this justify some of the statements the president has been making that he will slowly finish the opposition?
Well, Museveni has been competing with the opposition. Slowly or not, I don't think he has the capacity to finish the opposition. The opposition is not about us, the leaders. The opposition is about those of us who do not agree with him. He can continue fishing, but we also have been fishing from him in our small ways. I mean, if you have people like Majegere, people like the Honorable Kaluya, who crossed over from NRM to join us, you cannot say it's a mean achievement. It's a big one. But looking at the global picture, I think it should be about a contestation of ideas. If the Honorable Nsibambi and some others have seen things differently and they have decided to go, wish them luck. They have exercised their right, they have made their choice. I can only say choices have consequences. The peaks and drops. That's my worry and concern. And of course, when we liberate the country, we'll also liberate those that have crossed over to it. I mean, my choice is to liberate Nsibambi, liberate Anita, my daughter, the Speaker of Parliament, liberate Taibwa, the Deputy Speaker. All those are our children. Liberate anybody who has crossed over to NRM, but also liberate Museveni himself by bringing him away. And now the question is, are we organized enough to do that? I answer that in the negative. We now just have to reorganize, reconstruct ourselves, and then woo people back.
That we understand what is the opposition. Because there are two things we might mix up. The leadership of the opposition to this government and the population opposed to the government of Uganda. I think these two needs to be given a very clear demarcation. My own thinking is that over the years, the opposition to the NRM leadership has been growing geometrically. When I say geometrically, it's more than exponential. And that is explained by so many factors, including but not limited to the changes in the country's demographics, to violation of human rights, to economic decay that has occasioned poverty across the masses, frustration in the rank and file of the population that generally wants to see something different, something fresh. And of course, the decline in intuition and imagination in the NRM. All these are visited. Desire need for change that has been growing over time. And if you survey the nation, you'll discover that there are more people who desire change in the immediacy than yesterday. So it's not fair to say that the opposition has reduced. What has been changing shape, character, motivation, and imagination is the leadership to the opposition in the country. I think that's where we need to have a very serious conversation as to what became of leadership. We have, over the last couple of years, seen a shift from serious leadership that offers an alternative to the nation to mere speculators, gamblers, noisemakers that offer no hope. For me, that's where the problem is. So you have a bunch of political speculators calling themselves political opposition leaders, and they have turned the country politics into a casino. That does not offer hope to the population I've talked about that wants to see change. Those who want to see change don't simply want to see change in faces. They want to see change in quality and the options offered. The two, the faces and the quality of leadership, must move in the same direction. I think that's why we have an issue. Otherwise, what General Museveni spoke about, I think, having frustrated the need for change by organizing checkered elections like the one we just had, which was extensively flawed. In fact, for me, the biggest fraudulent election since, I think, independence, or since, I should say, since probably I started participating in the elections. He has every reason to say, I have done enough to frustrate them and render them incapable of offering alternatives, because he's been working on it. The movement of the Honorable Yusuf Nsibambi and others should never be used as a measure to determine, let alone compare or even postulate the need of Ugandans for change. I have immense respect for Councillor Yusuf Nsibambi. I know he's not acting impulsively, as some people are saying, because he lost an election. He's well aware of his decision. I'm very sure he thought about it variously. And all we can say is to wish him luck. My invitation to those who want to see new faces on the Uganda political scene and in the government is not to give up. The movement of an individual or even a group should never deter the desire to articulate the need for a new Uganda with a better imagination. Invariably, politics frustrates, but I dare say it's only those who will withstand the shocks of adversity, including frustration, that will give the country a political new look. Otherwise, if all of us are going to get cowed, get frustrated, fear to offer the alternative, withstand hostility, withstand shocks, withstand frustration, then probably the apocalypse of General Museveni will come to pass. Otherwise, for me, there are no shocks, no surprises. It is what politics is about. But Ugandans must also know that you need to have a stand in life. Probably that is the Council for the stand. What I do not understand from him is whether he's joined to complain from within, or is content that now things are better, he can join. That's the problem, and I've not spoken to him to understand his sense of view. Probably I can understand him better. I am not a speculator, and I dare say that politics is not a casino where people should go and gamble with their ideas. What you invest or what you sow is what you harvest. The opposition must, for its own survival and for the good of this country, up its game in terms of the quality of leadership it offers, in terms of the inner workings of the opposition, in terms of how we articulate the issues across the country, and in terms of how we approach the whole idea, the whole concept of opposition. Opposition should not be relegated to noise. Opposition must be understood from the context of the difference in the quality of ideas we bring across to change the face of this country. In particular, in the shape of the options we give to a young population that is desperate and desirous of change. The opposition should be able to articulate a very clear and elaborate political agenda with very clear policies that will migrate the frustration of our common peoples to think anew about the opposition. We saw the low turn-up of voters in the last election. That communicates some, not simply despondency, but frustration. That actually an election is prepared, is organized to facilitate the outgoing to be the incoming. It is the duty of the opposition to sit down, eat humble pie, talk to each other, really think about how we deal with our disagreements and offer the country hope. I have no doubt in my mind that the opposition, properly anchored, properly organized, with a well-articulated message, we can turn around our fortunes. And the happenings of the day are well calculated. The NRM is aware that if you take one of us, it of course leaves a gaping hole conceptually and practically in what we do, because if you build and then break, it's not, in our situation, it cannot be kujenga na kubomoa. We need to sustain, we need to build and sustain what we are doing, because any break off our hard work is a step in the wrong direction. So, but I have hope, not in the leadership of the opposition, in the citizenry, to even demand for better quality from the opposition, to be able to re-anchor and redirect our sails as the. I think you are taking me into political theory. We are dealing with the practical nature of our current politics. You will never probably separate politics and interests, okay? And for a fact, because so many of our political actors are hypocritical, they hide their interests behind, common good and all that. But eventually, when you pursue them to their heels, you discover that indeed it's self-interest at the helm of their agenda. The quest for us to raise the bar speaks to us to the need to raise politics beyond our own personal pursuits. But like I said, for you to be able to get that point, you must engage into self-education, either as an organization or as individuals, that when you eventually meet, your spirits have served the collective and you have self-educated to best understand what needs to be done. The beauty in our situation is that every political group has tested the fact that it doesn't help anybody to play selfish. That however much you expend energy and time and resources inward looking, you eventually fall on your own belly or back. And therefore it serves common good to listen to each other and understand how best you can bring your collective energies together and suppress the weaknesses of individuals. Commonness will suppress the small personal pursuits, and then common good will prevail.
What do you speak to the narrative that the road to end the opposition in Uganda has been so smooth for the NRM chairman?
If you understood my understanding of the opposition, then I dare say that the NRM chairman has misread the notes. He's probably read the cover, but not the text. The opposition is beyond leadership of what you see. And I dare say, as day follows night, you're going to see leadership of the opposition evolve. And I have no doubt in my mind that at some stage, opposition to the NRM will hit the right button. Deploying one dog to pursue so many beasts at the same time, and that spreads our energies too thin. The elephant in the room is governance of this country. Unfortunately, we do not have enough prisons to accommodate every dissenting voice. Therefore, it is foolhardy to imagine that whoever is dissenting will be sent to jail. And if the judiciary elects to use that, or if it's being real cornered to do that, then perhaps some of the judicial officers will turn into jails because we don't have enough space. So what I can imagine is that the whole thing about arresting young people and political dissenters has to do with our failure to deal with opposition to each other. As leader of the DF, I led my team prior to these elections, and we offered and documented our idea of how we should go about governance in this country. We offered a three-tier approach to the political contradictions in this country. We called out for constitutional and political reforms, including governance reforms, that would precede the transitional conversation, and then reconciliation will be the last thing. Reconciliation happens after admission of a problem. You can only call for reconciliation when you have understood that there's a problem. And at the DF, we contend that there's a problem. For some reason, there are those who want to run away from that problem. We should not be beginning from reconciliation. We must start with solving a serious political problem after every actor admitting that there's a problem. The whole idea of winner takes all, that a particular group will appropriate political power onto themselves and muzzle every space, political, civic, and otherwise, including business, from everyone, is something that will put this country at a cliff. So I contend that reconciliation can only be an outcome of a conversation of what has gone wrong. Because if we politicians reconcile without reconciling the politics, you'll have more young people in jail. And for me, that is actually putting the cart before the horse. It's problematic. Reconciliation is good, but it begins with the canvassing around and understanding and appreciating what has gone wrong, which is why a conversation about what has gone wrong with our political legislation, our mutilated constitution, will then give way to subsequent conversations, including debating the idea of the transition. That we fear to debate in this country, the fact that power can move from one person to another is problematic. And if we believe that when you join the NRM, you have solved a national problem, then we are lost. I think joining solves the personal problem. and I respect those who join to solve personal problems. I want to deal with the national problems, and that's our space at the DF. Honorable Nsibambi, musajja munnamateeka, si mwana muto, nandibadde mu Parliament amazemu ekisanja kimu, n'ebyobufuzi abiruddemu era abitegeera. N'olwekyo sirowooza nti alina kye yakoze ng'akikoze mu kiwuggwe, ate okuba nga buli kye yakoze yakyebuuliriddeko era akitegeera. Katumwagalize birungi olugendo lwatandise, naffe balese eno tumusabe atusabire tusigale eno ku lukuusi nga tusobola okukola bye tukola. Enjawulo yokka ku nkola ye naffe amu gye tulowooza eri nti okusala obusaze eddiiro, kubanga mbadde ndowooza nti Honorable Nsibambi akanya naffe abamu nti waliwo ekizibu etaaga okusalira amagezi mu bukulembeze bw'eggwanga lino. Ebizibu ebimu biri mu nkola, ebirala mu mateeka. N'olwekyo sirowooza nti ekyokwegatta obwegassi ku NRM kimalawo obuzibu obwo. Kisobola okuba nga kimalawo obuzibu obw'obuntu n'obw'omuntu omu, naye tikisobola kumalawo bizibu bye twogerako nga abaagala enkyukakyuka. Era gye yatandikira twali tulowooza nti FDC ng'ekibiina kyakkaanyiza okukola kityo, naye gye biggweredde atuyambye, nabo ne batuyamba noga nti Kanso Yusufu ensonga yiye ng'omuntu. Njala kusaba nno bannange bwe twagala enkyukakyuka, tembeera etuuse ku muganda waffe era saala kulowooza nti bamutadde mu muguwa. Ensonga ezimu zaayogerako naffe natuzaagala, ng'okutabagana nga bannayuganda, ng'okulekeraawo okutwala abantu mu makomera olw'obutakkaanya mu byobufuzi n'embeera eyefuga bbi, ffenna tubyagala. Naye waliwo ekisooka, tosobola kusaba nkoko bwana bwayo nga tebyese magi. Abantu bayogerako abali mu makomera, mubadde wano mu Parliament. Bwe nayira opposition ndooza nalwana nnyo okujja abantu abangi mu makomera, era bangi baateebwa, abalala baasulibwanga ku kkubo, abalala twabagirangayo mu kkooti. Ekyo kiganya okwongerayo abalala mu makomera. Kiba kitegeeza nti ekizibu tekiggwangawo, ekizibu kya byabufuzi. Nze ne bannange mu DF tulowooza nti emboozi y'ebyobufuzi erina okulinnyisibwa okusinga okutambulira mu kwegaana n'okugamba oba baganya okuwuliriza kambe egatteko. Sirowooza nti kyo kinamalawo ekizibu ky'ebyobufuzi mu ggwanga, okuggyako buli omu okuwuliriza munne ne bannaffe abeekomeza obuyinza okugula abantu bawulire nti embeera embi bw'ejja mu ggwanga buli muntu esobola okumunyiga nabyo esobola okubanyiga, neerabya n'okwerabira nti waliwo abo abeegasseeko. So Kanso Yusufu tumwagaliza obulamu obulungi, kasa tunasisinkananga ng'abantu bw'anaaba alina byasobodde okukyusa, eggwanga lirimwebaza.